Hey everyone, so for this client I'm going to do what I'll almost call like a hybrid cut, because it's a blend of a taper fade and a very low fade. So I start off by doing what I call creating the canvas, which is creating the space where I'm going to do my blending. So putting in the lowest level of the cut, which is going to be the skin level, and then putting in the highest level of the cut. So then the canvas is everything in between those two lengths. So to do this fade well, you do generally need a client to have a minimum of a number 2 on top to be able to stretch out the blend. Now for my client today, they actually want it higher than a number 2. They wanted it at a number 4. So as you can see, I've put in the skin level, which is going to be my lowest level, and as you can see at the moment it almost looks like a taper by how low I've gone on the skin level, but like I say, it's almost a hybrid of a taper fade and a low fade. So now I'm just repeating the process on the other side of the client's head and just putting in that skin level, going round to the back and meeting at the middle of the back of the head. Now just to point out a couple of things here, so I'm going to reduce the top, and remember I said I'm creating the canvas, so that's creating the lowest level and the highest level that I will then begin to blend through. So what you'll notice here with this particular client, in terms of his hair's pattern, he's greying in quite a patchy form. Now that's not a criticism, it's just the natural way that his hair's greying. So you've almost got 3 shades of hair. You've got white hair, grey hair and black hair all blended together. Now this will naturally affect the look of the blend, because whilst you may do a really smooth fade, it can still look patchy because of the various colours of hair. So don't be surprised if you're cutting a mature man's hair and their hair is graying in a patchy form, then that will have an impact on how the blend will look. Not everything will look uniform, even though you've done a really good fade. Now as I'm reducing the top, I noticed something particularly at the back of the client's head. In terms of their natural head shape, they have quite a significant indentation just above the occipital bone. So that will also influence the way I cut this haircut and how much I take off above the occipital bone to not make that too obvious. So now I'm going to go in with a number 3 at the top of the blend zone. So the blend zone is going to be, if you want to say, that's my canvas where I'm going to be blending from the top down to the skin level. So I've gone in with a number 3, going against the grain, and just really at this point I'm more focused on just reducing the hair down. I will be blending it and there will be some refinement work, but right now I just want to help reduce the amount of hair that there is so this blend can begin to take shape. You'll notice that I'm going in different directions as I'm reducing the hair on the side with the number 3. As you can see, the client's hair is very curly on this side of their hair. So I have to go in different directions to just make sure that it is level, because there are different growth patterns. And what you'll see as we go through this cut is that the client actually has different growth patterns on different parts of their head. And this is what makes barbering such a visual skill. You have to look at what you see and then adapt your approach accordingly. So now I'm on a number 2, once again going up first against the grain and then coming down on top to blend in with that number 3 that's just above. And sorry, the video got a bit out of focus here. My camera focus kind of adapted and focused on my hand, but yeah, I'm just working with that number 2, once again going in different directions with the growth pattern of the client's hair, blending up going up and then coming down on top, begin to create that blend and begin to reduce the hair. Now I'm getting my 1.5 guard, and same process again. I've got the bail arm closed and going up and then going to come down again on top. So going to repeat this process through to having no guard. So yeah, I'm just looking at the hair, and like I say, I'm not using guidelines here. So as I say, this technique is very visual. You have to be careful not to go up too high, but also look at the hair and see where you finished up, come in with the guard below, and then just begin to naturally blend. So as you can see, there is a blend that is beginning to take shape here as I'm going through the guard system. So after this 1.5, I'll then come in with a number 1. So now you see with the number 1, the fade is really taking shape now. At this point, don't worry about things not looking perfect. There'll be time for refinement. It's about getting the general blend in, and then there'll be time to go back over and refine the fade and make it look neat, to make it look sharper, which you'll see me do later in this video. But with that number 1, as I say, I'm going up and then blending down afterwards. And now at this point, now I've taken the number 1 off, and now I'm just using the 0.5 blade, so no guard on, the bail arm open, and going up and then coming down on top, and this is then blending into that lowest skin level. And what I tend to do, I'll then move the bail arm halfway between open and closed to make sure that blend into the 0 is really smooth. So here now I'm starting to do a bit of refining. I've gone back in, I believe that was with a number 2, gone back in just to do a bit of refining where I can see there's a bit of bulk that needs to be blended in. I'm now working on that. Also, it's worth mentioning here, when clients have different growth patterns, so for example with this client, on this side of their hair it's very curly, you may have to work a bit harder in terms of blending it to get that transition going through the hair and looking good. But if a client has hair that naturally lies down, then it will be easier to achieve that blend and it will look very smooth. You may not have to work as hard. So now I'm going to start working on that back zone, and as I mentioned, you might even be able to notice slightly, if you look just above the occipital bone, the client does have a natural indentation in their head, and that's just the shape of their head, but I don't want to accentuate that, so I'm making sure not to take too much off from above the occipital bone. Right now I'm just reducing the hair, beginning this blend process. So I've gone in with that number 3, gone up, then blended down, but as you can even see as I'm cutting it, it's now creating more of a rounded shape to take away from that natural indentation they have, which kind of sticks out. So you can cut and form a haircut in a way to almost dictate the shape or the appearance of a client's head shape by the way you cut the hair, which is what I'm doing with this client here. Now what you'll notice, as I mentioned before, about the different hair colors as someone naturally grays, you can see on the back there's a few things I want to highlight. Firstly, you can see on the back of the client's head that they've actually got more darker black hair on the back of their head versus the top and the sides. So once again, this all has an impact on how a blend and a fade will look. The second thing that's worth noticing here is the way the customer's hair lies, and their texture of their hair is very different from the side to the back. So if you have a look at the side, you can naturally see it's more curly afro, but you can see on the back their hair naturally lies down more. And so these are some of the technicalities and challenges that we can face when cutting somebody's hair, is the different growth patterns and hair textures that they have. Now our goal is to try and blend in a way that helps you make it look uniform. So So I'm using the same technique I was on the side in terms of going down through the guard system. As I'm going down through the guard system, I'm noticing a few things also, that the client has a few more indentations in terms of their natural head shape, which once again influences the way the fade looks. So there may be parts of the blend that are looking darker, but it's not necessarily that they are dark and I've left a clump of hair. It's where there's a natural indentation, so I'm having to work with that, as well as work with them having darker hair in some spots and lighter hair in others. So I'm just working through that, and now going back to do a bit of refinement on the top, removing just some excess on the top and trying to create the right uniform shape for this client. As this is the extended version of this cut, I'm letting you see both sides of the hair as I blend it. Now I just want to highlight a few things. What you'll notice is already just from cutting the other side and part of the back, you can see the shape of the customer's head now looks naturally rounded, even though there is an indentation just above the occipital bone in the client's head. But if you look from the top all the way down to the back by his neck, there's this nice natural curve as a result of the way I've sculpted the cut on those higher levels. So this is just part of the mastery and the trickery that we can do in barbering to give the perception of a particular form in regards to a client's hair. So once again, as you see, the technique I'm using, I'm blending from the top down. So went in with the number 3, went up, then came down on top, and now going in with the number 2, and once again blending and reducing the hair so that it will naturally come and blend down into that skin level. What you can also clearly see here once again is, if you want to say, the patchiness of the client's hair color. So you've got patches of black, the lighter gray, as well as the white hair. So having to work with all of that. So this takes time doing that, but when you get it right, it will give the right shape and a good look, and the blend will still be a good blend, even if it doesn't appear to look completely smooth because of the different patches of hair color. Now, what I didn't mention also at the beginning of this video is that I'll also be doing the client's beard, which is why this is an extended video, and that I'll also be showing how I blend the client's beard and sculpt and shape it. As you can see, they've got a very full and big beard, but it's also very white in terms of the natural color. So you'll see how I approach that, as well as doing the shape up, as there's going to be some key bits of information that I will share with you in regards to how I approach the shape up. One thing I will say now is this client specifically didn't want any kind of enhancements. That's just not for them. They prefer just to work with their natural hair color, hair look. So there are no enhancements in here. Now, I know we're in a time where it almost seems odd to not see photos or videos which don't have enhancements, because a lot of people do get them, but we have to serve everybody, and not everybody does want a color enhancement, whether it be dyeing their hair or an enhancement in terms of shape up coloring and things like that. So this is going to be, if you want to say, a very true to life haircut. You'll notice as I'm blending here, I'm actually not using the whole blade, I'm just using the corner just to blend in at that lower level, just to kind of blend the hair around the ear. And now I'm putting on a guard, and I think I'm going to come in, I think it's either with the number 1, just to help develop that fade, going round, connecting the side to the back. The blend at this point isn't completely perfect, but I will come back and do some refinement work. So as you can see here now, I'm just coming in and I'm just working on those higher areas just to get it to blend in and connect a bit better with the lower levels of the fade. So now I'm focusing on connecting the side of the head, the left side to the back of the head. One thing I'll say at this point is body positioning, I think, is really important. So I'm standing diagonal of the side or of the corner of the client's head. So that allows me to see the left side that's been blended, and then the right back side of the head that's also been blended. So now I can check that the work that I'm doing is balanced and matches up with the right side of the head and the left side that I've already started working on. So you'll notice during this cut that I'm using a comb instead of a brush. So just a guide here as to when I decide if I'm going to use a comb or use a brush. So this is a little saying that I personally have: brushes brush the hair down and combs comb the hair out. So with very curly afro hair, I'll tend to use a comb because I want to comb it out so I can ensure that when I cut the hair, it's level. So by cutting it and then going through it with the comb, it helps kind of lift the hair and make sure that it's level. If I used a brush with curly afro hair, it would brush it down, and then when I'm going through with the clippers, I may not be seeing the true length. So I would tend to use a brush if I'm going to be doing a lower level cut, in terms of, say it's like a number 1 on top fading down to skin, then I'll likely use a brush. Or if the hair's naturally lays down very flat and is very wavy, I also would use a brush there. But for this client, as you can see, their hair is naturally very curly, apart from the back, which does tend to lay down more. But I use the comb just to ensure that it's truly cutting at the right length and that everything is balanced. So at this point now, I'm just doing some more work on refining the blend at the back of the client's head, and as you can see, the patches of color, quite strong black, some light gray, a bit of white there. So just having to work with it just to make sure it's blended and even across the board, even though it may appear to not be entirely even because of those darker spots. But as you can also see as well, this hairstyle or this haircut that the client requested, you can see why I kind of refer to it almost as a bit of a hybrid cut, in that it's a blend between, say, almost like a taper and a low fade. So have to just kind of work with it and craft it as I go along to the customer's request. Okay, so now I'm just going to do some refining work with the scissors. So I've combed out the hair before I began to work with the scissors, just to make sure any curly hairs kind of stand up and can be caught by the scissors as I go over them, and just being very light, making sure that I don't cut too much off the top, just going around the head and just, yeah, creating the nice shape, sculpting it with the scissors. So now I'm getting to work with blending the beard. On this side I'd already blended the top just a little bit, but on the other side you'll see me do it. But right now I'm just beginning to sculpt the beard. As you can see, the client has a very big and full beard, and they didn't want too much coming off. It's just been outgrown, so they just wanted it redefined, just the ends kind of taken off. So just using the clipper with the bail arm closed, and I'm just sculpting at this point just to get a nice shape to the beard, so it still looks full, but it is nice and defined. So just doing that on both sides, and then at the front, the shape that the client wanted was for it to be rounded at the front, have kind of sharp edges on the side, but rounded at the front. So I'm just sculpting that at the moment. One bit of advice I always give when you are doing a beard that's full and rich like this is it's better to take less than take more when you're sculpting. When someone's got a big beard like this, the worst thing you can do is cut off too much and then it look imbalanced, and you then need to take more off to balance it out. So I'd always say take your time and just sculpt, take little by little to get to the desired shape and look that the client wants, just to ensure that you don't take too much. So now you can see that I'm fading in the beard. Now the client specifically doesn't want too much taken off their beard, so I'm just doing a short blend on their beard. So with that I've gone down about an inch and a half at most, and then blending into the skin level and then sculpting it into the longer length of the beard, so it remains full and rich and gives the client the desired look that they're after. As you can see, my sculpting work is really starting to come together now. The beard still looks rich and full, but it's now got a nice defined shape to it, rounded by the chin, but also got a nice blend leading up to the lower lip. Now I'm beginning to work on the shape up of the beard. So my approach is generally going in soft in terms of not making too hard a line straight away. Now because this beard's quite full, even though I'm not going in too hard, you can already quickly see the lines looking quite defined. But the approach I like to take is go in soft on the shape up first time, go back in a second time, and go in maybe a bit closer. What I tend to use is either talcum powder or a chalk pencil, just so I can really define where I want the line to be and make sure that I get that accurate. Now this client has quite a natural line to their beard, as you could see. So you could see there was actually some darker hair. They had some black hair on the side of their face at the top of their beard, but the thickness of their beard is really where the bright white grey hair is. So this was quite easy to shape up, as I could follow that natural line. And now I'm just doing a little bit of work around the top of the lip, just to connect the side of the beard to the lip area. Now the client wants a very natural look to their beard, so with shaping up the top lip I'm being careful not to go in too harsh and not go too high, but just take off the hairs that are overgrown the top of the lip, so that it creates a defined line around the shape of their lip. So now we come to the shape up, and one of the best bits of advice I've ever been given in regards to cutting hair was the best haircut you can give a client is to give them the haircut that they asked for. Now, many times over the many years I've been cutting hair, I've seen barbers who give a customer what they think is best for them when the customer hasn't asked for that or the client hasn't asked for that, because they want a haircut to look a certain way. So I've seen barbers push a person's hairline back because they want to make it look more defined, but the client didn't ask for that to be done. Now with this client, they are very clear about the fact that their hairline is receding, which you can see. So they have almost like a peak to their hairline, where in the middle of their head, their hair is quite thick at the front, but it's receded on both sides. Now, one thing that they didn't want is their hairline to be pushed back, and they also said they didn't want any enhancements. So what that means is that ultimately the shape up is going to look a bit weaker on the sides versus the middle of their hair, because the hair is thin in there and it's thicker further back. But once again, this is what the client asked for, so it's important to give them what they want versus what you may want to see. So here I'm just sticking to their guidelines. I'm making sure that the shape up is balanced, and as you'll see here, I'm using talcum powder just in my hand and then using that with the trimmer, dipping the trimmer into it to then give myself a guide. Now where this comes in handy and is helpful is when you are dealing either with people who have a very faint hairline or they've got very grey or bright white hair. It can be hard to see the true hairline, so by using the talcum powder, it's allowing me to create the shape, the natural shape that the client has, that I can then work with when I go over it with a razor afterwards as well. So that's just a little tip as to why I use talcum powder or a chalk pencil, whichever you prefer. Now this client actually began to fall asleep whilst I was doing their shape up, and this can commonly happen in the barber's chair, but what I had to do was just use my other hand to kind of hold their head in position so that I could do the shape up, and because their head was literally dropping to the side or dropping to the front at points. So to make sure that I didn't push their hairline back or make a mistake, just kind of hold their head in the position I needed to be so I could do the shape up. And this is also going to be critical once I start going in with the cutthroat razor, because the worst thing that could happen or that you don't want to happen is that their head just drops and moves and you cut them with the razor blade. So here, just kind of holding their head where I want to be, keeping it steady so I can just do my work with the razor just to define the line even more. So there you have it, guys, this hybrid haircut of a taper fade stroke dropped fade with the number 4 on the top blended down to a 0, as well as now this full beard that's had a very small blend just at the top but then been defined to give a very natural look.